Every crazy prison escape explained. The Alabama peanut butter escape, 2017. They smeared it on a door sign and walked right out. But what these 12 inmates didn't realize was that freedom tastes nothing like peanut butter. On July 30th, 2017, Walker County Jail in Alabama became the scene of one of the most bizarre mass prison breaks in recent history. The mastermind, Brady Andrew Kilpatrick. Along with his fellow inmates, they had been collecting peanut butter from their meal trays for days. Their plan was ingeniously simple. The jail's control system relied on numbered doors controlled by a guard in another room. The inmates used peanut butter to change the number above an exit door, making it appear to be a cell door. When a new guard was on duty, one inmate asked him to open what he claimed was his cell. The unsuspecting guard pressed the button corresponding to the door, unknowingly unlocking an exterior door. Within moments, 12 inmates slipped through and scaled the perimeter fence, using prison blankets to protect themselves from razor wire. The alarm was raised during routine checks, but by then, the inmates had a 15-minute head start. Within 12 hours, 11 escapees were recaptured in the surrounding area. Only Kilpatrick made it to Florida before authorities caught him several days later. Sheriff James Underwood later remarked, "It may sound crazy, but these kinds of people are crazy, like a fox. They've got nothing but time on their hands to figure out ways to escape." A taste of freedom lasted just hours for most, proving that sometimes the simplest plans have the stickiest endings. 8. John Dillinger's fake gun escape, 1934. He carved it from soap, painted it black, and pointed it at guards. But what made America's most wanted criminal truly dangerous wasn't the gun in his hand. It was the mind behind it. In the heart of the Great Depression, John Dillinger had earned the dubious honor of being named Public Enemy #1 by the FBI. After being captured in Arizona, he was extradited to the escape-proof Lake County Jail in Crown Point, Indiana, to face murder charges. Dillinger carved a realistic-looking pistol from a wooden washboard using a razor blade, then blackened it with shoe polish. On March 3, 1934, Dillinger made his move. Using his fake gun, he forced several guards into his cell, took their real weapons, and then locked them up. With real guns now in his possession, he gathered more hostages, including the warden, and made his way out. In a display of audacity, Dillinger asked which car belonged to the sheriff and stole that one for his getaway. The ultimate insult to authorities who had boasted about their escape-proof facility. The escape humiliated Indiana authorities and intensified the FBI manhunt. Dillinger assembled a new gang and continued robbing banks across the Midwest. But his luck ran out on the 22nd of July, 1934. After attending a movie in Chicago, he was confronted by FBI agents as he left the theater. When he reached for his gun, the agents opened fire, killing him on the spot. He escaped with a fake gun, but real bullets ended his story, proving that even legends can't outrun their fate forever. 7. Choi Gap Box Yoga Escape, 2012. The food slot was barely 6 inches tall, about the height of a smartphone. But after decades of yoga practice, this 50-year-old prisoner saw it as something else entirely, a door to freedom. On September 12, 2012, guards at a detention center in Daegu, South Korea, discovered cell number 7 was empty despite all doors remaining locked. The occupant, 50-year-old Choi Gap-bok, had seemingly vanished into thin air. Choi had been arrested just 5 days earlier on robbery charges. What made him unique was his 23-year dedication to yoga, spending hours daily perfecting poses that gave him extraordinary control over his body. Security footage revealed the incredible escape. At approximately 5 a.m., when a guard momentarily dozed off, Choi applied ointment to his upper body and approached the food slot measuring just 5.9 inches tall and 17.7 inches wide. In a display of flexibility that would impress even accomplished contortionists, Choi squeezed his head through the tiny opening, then maneuvered his shoulders through by dislocating them. His torso followed, compressed to an almost impossible thinness, and finally his legs slipped through. The entire escape took just 34 seconds. South Korean media dubbed Choi the Korean Houdini. Despite his remarkable escape skills, his freedom was short-lived. Just 6 days later, Police found him hiding in a closet about 30 miles from the detention center. After his recapture, authorities placed Choi in a cell with a food slot too small even for his extraordinary flexibility, and guards were instructed to monitor him constantly. He bent his body to escape confinement, but couldn't bend fate, proving that flexibility might open doors, but doesn't guarantee freedom. 6. Michel Vaujour's helicopter escape, 1986. He painted fruit to look like weapons, forced his way to the roof, and flew away. But the most shocking part of this escape wasn't the helicopter. It was who was flying it. In May 1986, Michel Vaujour was serving a lengthy sentence at Fleury-Mérogis prison near Paris. What the authorities didn't account for was the extraordinary lengths to which his wife Nadine would go to free him. Over several weeks, Vaujour collected nectarines from prison meals and carefully painted them to resemble hand grenades. He also crafted what appeared to be a pistol from soap. The final products were remarkably convincing, especially when viewed from a distance by nervous prison guards. Meanwhile, outside the prison walls, Nadine Vaujour was preparing her part of the plan. With no prior flying experience, she took intensive helicopter pilot lessons, learning in weeks what normally takes months to master. On May 26, 1986, Michel forced his way onto the prison roof with his fake weapons. Guards, believing the nectarines were real grenades, didn't dare approach him. At the prearranged time, a small helicopter appeared overhead, with Nadine at the controls. She hovered precariously over the prison roof while Michel climbed aboard. The helicopter landed in a nearby football field where a getaway car was waiting. For several months, the couple evaded capture. But their freedom ended when Nadine was eventually captured and Michel was shot in the head during a failed robbery attempt. He reached for the sky and briefly touched freedom, but gravity eventually pulls everyone back down. 5. David Sweat and Richard Matt's pipe escape, 2015. They left dummies in their beds, a taunting note for guards, and disappeared through a labyrinth of pipes. But what truly made this escape possible wasn't steel tools. It was a forbidden romance. On June 6, 2015, guards at Clinton Correctional Facility in Dannemora, New York, discovered that inmates David Sweat and Richard Matt had vanished, leaving dummy figures in their beds. Clinton wasn't just any prison. Known as Little Siberia for its remote location near the Canadian border, it was a maximum security facility that had never experienced an escape in its 170-year history. The crucial element of their plan came in the form of Joyce Mitchell, a prison tailor shop supervisor who became emotionally involved with Matt. Over several months, Mitchell smuggled tools to the inmates, hiding hacksaw blades and drill bits in frozen hamburger meat. With these tools, Sweat and Matt cut through a brick wall, a steel plate, and various pipes. For more than 3 weeks, Sweat explored the catwalks and tunnels beneath the prison, mapping a route to freedom. They followed a steam pipe for more than a block before cutting their way out through a manhole cover beyond the prison walls, leaving a mocking note that read, "Have a nice day." Mitchell, who was supposed to be their getaway driver, lost her nerve and checked herself into a hospital instead. This forced the escapees to flee on foot into the wilderness without supplies or transportation. For 22 days, the pair evaded capture, breaking into vacation cabins for food and supplies. On June 26th, a tactical team encountered Matt in the woods and shot him dead when he refused to drop a stolen shotgun. 2 days later, a state trooper spotted Sweat jogging near the Canadian border and shot and wounded him, ending the manhunt. They escaped through pipes but couldn't escape their own mistakes, leaving behind a trail that led straight back to captivity. 4. Pascal Paillet's helicopter escapes, 2001 to 2007. Once could be luck, twice might be skill, but 3 helicopter escapes from maximum security? That's when prison officials realized they weren't dealing with an ordinary criminal. They were facing a mastermind. Pascal Paillet, a French criminal serving 30 years for murder, didn't just orchestrate one helicopter prison break. He managed 3 separate aerial escapes, earning him legendary status in prison break history. On October 12, 2001, while being held at a prison near Aix-en-Provence, Paillet executed his first helicopter escape. He had coordinated with accomplices who hijacked a helicopter and forced the pilot to land on the prison's roof. In broad daylight, Paillet climbed aboard and was whisked away to freedom. Most escaped convicts would lie low after such a high-profile breakout. Not Payet. In a move demonstrating extraordinary audacity, he orchestrated a second helicopter operation in 2003, not for himself, but to free 3 former accomplices from the very same prison. French authorities eventually recaptured Payet and took extraordinary measures to prevent another escape. They transferred him frequently between prisons and classified him as a specially monitored prisoner. These precautions proved insufficient. On July 14, 2007, Bastille Day, France's national holiday, Payet escaped by helicopter yet again. 4 masked men hijacked a helicopter, landed in the prison exercise yard, and extracted Payet in an operation lasting less than 5 minutes. Despite the intensive search, Payet evaded capture for 2 months before Spanish police tracked him to an apartment in Barcelona. Following his recapture, French authorities implemented unprecedented security measures and installed anti-helicopter nets over exercise yards throughout the French prison system. He soared above prison walls 3 times, proving that, while bars can contain a man, they can't always contain his ambition. 3. El Chapo's tunnel escapes, 2001 and 2015. The shower floor in his cell slid away, revealing a tunnel so sophisticated it had lighting, ventilation, and even a motorcycle. But what made this escape truly remarkable wasn't the engineering. It was that he'd done it before. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, leader of the Sinaloa cartel, had built one of the most powerful criminal organizations in history. By the early 2000s, Forbes magazine was listing him among the world's billionaires. El Chapo's first major imprisonment came in 1993, when he was sentenced to 20 years for murder and drug trafficking. On January 19, 2001, he made his first escape. According to the official story, he hid in a laundry cart, but subsequent investigations revealed he simply walked out the front door wearing a police uniform after bribing officials. Nearly 80 people, including 13 top prison officials, were implicated in the escape. For the next 13 years, El Chapo remained at large until his capture in February 2014. He was sent to Altiplano, Mexico's most secure federal prison, where he was kept under 24-hour surveillance. On July 11, 2015, just 17 months after his capture, surveillance cameras showed El Chapo approaching the shower area in his cell. When he didn't reappear, guards found a rectangular opening in the shower floor, leading to an astonishing tunnel. The tunnel stretched for nearly a mile, from the prison to a half-built house in a nearby field. It featured an elaborate ventilation system, electric lighting, and even a motorcycle modified to run on rails. The engineering challenges were immense, requiring GPS coordinates and sophisticated surveying equipment to align precisely with Guzman's cell. 6 months later, on January 8, 2016, Mexican Marines recaptured Guzman. This time, Mexico took no chances and extradited him to the United States, where he now serves a life sentence at ADX Florence in Colorado, the most secure federal prison in the United States. He built empires above ground and escape routes below, but eventually every tunnel reaches its end. 2. Yoshi Shiratori's 4 escapes, 1936 to 1947. He escaped with a wire, then through an air vent, then by dislocating his own shoulder. But for his 4th and final prison break, all he needed was a bowl of soup and unbreakable determination. Between 1936 and 1947, Yoshi Shiratori escaped from 4 different Japanese prisons, earning him the nickname, "the man no prison could hold." Born in 1907, Shiratori maintained his innocence after being accused of murder, claiming he had been framed by a local gang. At Aomori Prison, his first escape came after meticulously studying guards' routines. Using a wire from a bathhouse bucket, he picked his cell lock during a security gap. He was recaptured 3 days later and transferred to Akita Prison with tighter security. At Akita, despite being handcuffed at all times, Shiratori practiced scaling the walls of his cell. During a thunderstorm, he slipped out of his handcuffs and climbed to an air vent, where he had loosened the rusted fittings. His freedom lasted several months until he trusted a seemingly kind guard who betrayed him. His 3rd imprisonment was at the notorious Abashiri prison on Japan's northernmost tip. Authorities placed him in heavy iron restraints that only a blacksmith could remove. For months, Shiratori dripped miso soup, a salty broth, onto his shackles and the metal food slot, gradually corroding the metal. When the opening was finally large enough, he dislocated his own shoulder to squeeze through the tiny food slot, becoming the first and only prisoner ever to escape from Abashiri. After living as a fugitive for over a year, a violent confrontation with a farmer led to his final capture and death sentence. At Sapporo prison, where 6 guards watched him around the clock, Shiratori unscrewed the floorboards beneath his bed and, using only a miso soup bowl as a digging tool, tunneled his way out. After a year in hiding, Shiratori inexplicably confessed his identity to a police officer. By this time, Japan's prison system had undergone reforms. When he explained that he had only escaped because of abusive conditions, the court showed sympathy. The death sentence was lifted, and he was released early for good behavior in 1961. He escaped 4 prisons, but never escaped his own conscience, eventually finding true freedom only by facing justice on his own terms. 1. The Alcatraz Escape, 1962. They vanished into the cold waters of San Francisco Bay, leaving behind dummy heads in their beds. 60 years later, we still don't know if they drowned or pulled off the greatest prison escape in American history. On June 12, 1962, guards at Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary discovered that inmates Frank Morris and brothers John and Clarence Anglin had vanished, leaving behind elaborate dummies in their beds. Alcatraz wasn't just any prison. Built on a rocky island in San Francisco Bay, the Rock was America's premier maximum security facility. Its location was its greatest security feature, surrounded by frigid waters and powerful currents that experts believed made swimming to shore virtually impossible. Frank Morris was the mastermind, a career criminal with an IQ of 133. Using stolen spoons and other makeshift tools, including a homemade drill fashioned from a vacuum cleaner motor, the men enlarged the air vents in their adjacent cells to create openings large enough to crawl through. Behind their cells was an unguarded utility corridor where they created a secret workshop. Using more than 50 raincoats, they constructed a makeshift life raft and life preservers. They also crafted dummy heads using soap, toilet paper, and toothpaste, adding paint and human hair from the prison barber shop. On the night of June 11, 1962, they placed the dummy heads in their beds, climbed through the vent openings, navigated through the utility corridor to the roof, descended to the ground, and inflated their raft at the water's edge. Then they disappeared into the darkness of San Francisco Bay. The FBI concluded the men had drowned in the bay's cold waters and strong currents. But no bodies were ever recovered, and tantalizing clues have emerged suggesting they might have survived. In 2013, the San Francisco Police Department received a letter purportedly from John Anglin. In 2015, a History Channel documentary presented a photograph allegedly showing the Anglin brothers in Brazil in 1975. The case officially remains open at the U.S. Marshal Service. The only Alcatraz escape attempt still listed as active. They either died in the bay that night or lived decades in freedom, proving that sometimes the greatest escape is leaving behind an unsolvable mystery. These were the most daring prison escapes in history. But did you catch how the Japanese prisoner used soup to melt metal? Watch again, and don't miss our next video.